The 1970s was a decade of bold styling, chrome extravagance, and ambitious automotive designs. But beneath the flashy exteriors and glamorous interiors, many cars failed to deliver on performance, reliability, or market appeal. These 9 stunning cars dazzled with their looks, but crashed hard when it came to sales, reputation, or practicality. Here's a look at some of the most beautiful yet biggest flops of the 70s.
Dear viewer, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support.
Number 9. The Mercury Cyclone spoiler was born in a time when racing success was a direct ticket to showroom sales. It was Mercury's statement piece in the muscle car wars, combining aggressive aerodynamics with vivid graphics and genuine NASCAR engineering pedigree. And yet, despite its bold design and serious performance, the spoiler never captured the same fame or following as some of its Ford and Mopar rivals. By 1970, Detroit's aero wars were in full swing. Ford and Mercury were battling Chrysler and NASCAR, where aerodynamics were suddenly the deciding factor on the superspeedways. Plymouth had its Roadrunner Superbird. Dodge had its Daytona. Ford had its Torino Talladega. Mercury's answer? The Cyclone spoiler. The spoiler took Mercury's mid-size Cyclone fastback and gave it a wind-cheating front end, revised trim, and enough visual punch to stop traffic. The Cyclone spoiler's most distinctive feature was its aerodynamic nose cone, a pointed, flush front that sliced through the air better than a traditional grille. Other key visual elements included hidden headlights tucked into the nose for a cleaner profile, sculpted fastback roofline that flowed neatly into the trunk, bright side stripes and bold color schemes like competition yellow or calypso coral, rear deck spoiler for high-speed stability. The result was a car that screamed NASCAR special even sitting still. The spoiler was no mere decal package, it came with serious hardware. Standard, 351 Cleveland V8 for respectable performance. Optional, 429 Cobra Jet, 370 horsepower, or the mighty 429 Super Cobra Jet with ram air induction and beefed-up internals. Heavy-duty cooling, suspension, and axle options for endurance at high speed. In the right spec, the Cyclone spoiler could run the quarter mile in the low 14s and cruise at triple-digit speeds with ease. Here's where Mercury ran into trouble. While the Cyclone spoiler was fast and flashy, it faced 2 major competitors that weren't from another brand. They were from inside Ford's own lineup. The Ford Torino Cobra was mechanically similar, shared racing credibility, and had a bigger marketing push. The Mustang Mach-1 offered a sportier, more widely recognized nameplate for the same or less money. Mercury was positioned as Ford's luxury division, and buyers often saw it as a step up in comfort rather than a pure performance brand, a mismatch for the spoiler's NASCAR ambitions. Even without Ford's internal competition, 1970 was a turning point for muscle cars. Insurance premiums for high-performance models were spiking. Emissions regulations were looming for 1971. The market was saturated with muscle machines. Buyers had endless options. The Cyclone spoiler's mix of performance and price, $3,700 plus when well optioned, placed it in a tight corner. Too expensive for budget street racers, too raw for Mercury's traditional buyers. The 1970 Cyclone lineup sold fewer than 7,000 units, and the spoiler was just a fraction of that number. NASCAR wins kept the name in the racing press but didn't translate to showroom dominance. By the early 70s, Mercury quietly shifted back towards personal luxury and comfort, leaving the muscle market to Ford's Torino and Mustang. Today, the Cyclone spoiler is a rare sight and a hidden gem for enthusiasts. It's instantly recognizable thanks to its nose cone and racing graphics. Survivors with the 429 SCJ and factory drag or NASCAR options are especially prized. Its rarity makes it stand out at muscle car shows dominated by Chevelles, Roadrunners, and Mustangs. While it never achieved the cultural fame of the Superbird or Daytona, it's every bit as interesting and far more affordable in the collector market. The Cyclone spoiler embodies the end of an era, a factory-built racer you could drive to work. a product of direct competition between Detroit's racing divisions. Proof that even great performance and bold styling could be lost in the shuffle without the right marketing and brand positioning. It's a car that deserved more attention in its day, and finally gets it now, decades later. Number 8. When Dodge rolled out the 1971 Super Bee, it was trying to keep the muscle car flame burning bright in a rapidly changing automotive world. The car had all the traditional hallmarks of Mopar performance: bold styling, outrageous graphics, and thunderous V8 power. But it landed right as the golden age of muscle cars began to unravel. The Super Bee name debuted in 1968 as Dodge's budget street brawler based on the mid-size Coronet. It was meant to be a slightly more upscale counterpart to Plymouth's Roadrunner, stripped down, loud, and all about quarter-mile fun at an affordable price. By 1971, Dodge moved the Super Bee over to the Charger platform. This was partly to consolidate production, partly to freshen up the car's image. The move meant the Super Bee now shared the Charger's curvier, fuselage body style and a more upscale interior, while still trying to maintain its working-class muscle ethos. The 1971 Charger body was longer, lower, and more rounded than the slab-sided 68 to 70 versions. The Super Bee version stood out with bright side stripes featuring the iconic Super Bee cartoon mascot, a bold loop front bumper integrated with the grille, optional hood scoops or Ram Charger fresh air hoods, attention-grabbing high-impact colors like Plum Crazy, Hemi Orange, and Citron Yellow. The look was in your face, exactly what Mopar fans loved, but it also marked the last truly wild pre-regulation year before big changes hit. Buyers could spec the Super Bee with a range of V8 power plants: 383 Magnum V8, standard with 300-plus horsepower, 440 six-pack, 3 two-barrel carbs, 385 horsepower, and brutal mid-range punch, 426 Hemi, the legendary 425 horsepower race-bred monster for the truly brave and well-funded. Transmissions ranged from 3-speed manuals to the bulletproof TorqueFlite 727 automatic. Properly optioned, a 440 six-pack Super Bee could rip the quarter mile in the low 14s, with the Hemi dipping into the high 13s. Serious speed for a street car in 1971. Here's where the trouble began. The 71 Super Bee was fast and flashy, but the muscle car market was changing fast. Insurance companies began adding steep surcharges for high horsepower models, making them unaffordable for younger buyers. Gas prices, while not yet at the crisis levels of 1973 to 74, were already creeping up, and the big blocks were thirsty. Emissions regulations were starting to bite into performance for upcoming model years, making 71 the last gasp before detuning became widespread. Buyers who once jumped at a big block bargain now had second thoughts. Production numbers tell the story. Dodge sold just over 5,000 Super Bees in 1971, far fewer than in its late 60s heyday. Many muscle fans stuck with the Plymouth Roadrunner, which kept its own identity and slightly lower price. Others shifted towards smaller, lighter performance cars like the Duster 340 or even non-Mopar rivals like the Camaro Z28. The Super Bee's blend of performance and style just didn't align with the new realities of cost and insurance. 1971 was the final year for the Super Bee as a standalone model. For 1972, it was demoted to an option package on the Charger, a sure sign that the muscle car era was losing steam. The high-compression big blocks were on borrowed time, and by mid-decade, the Bee's sting had dulled considerably. Enthusiasts now look back at the 71 Super Bee as a last-of-the-line true muscle Mopar, especially when ordered with the 440 six-pack or 426 Hemi. Its rarity, one-year-only Charger body combination, and outrageous colors make it a hit at car shows. It also serves as a reminder that timing can make or break a car. The 71 Super Bee had all the right ingredients for success, but the market had already begun to shift beneath its tires. Number 7. By 1973, the Pontiac GTO was no longer the street terror it had been in the mid to late 60s. Instead, it found itself in a changing automotive landscape where government regulations, insurance crackdowns, and shifting buyer tastes were rewriting the rules. The 73 model was stylish, comfortable, and still had respectable power on paper, but it wasn't the same beast that had made the GTO name legendary. The original 1964-1970 GTO helped create the muscle car movement. Big engines in mid-size bodies, aggressive looks, and affordable prices made it the darling of car magazines and drag strips alike. But by the early 70s, the muscle car boom was cooling. Emissions regulations forced lower compression ratios and tamer cam profiles. Insurance companies were punishing high-horsepower models with sky-high premiums. The 1973 GTO was entering a market where buyers wanted comfort as much as speed, and that spelled trouble for a name built on raw performance. The 73 GTO was built on GM's new Colonnade A-body platform. This redesign featured thicker B-pillars and fixed side glass behind the front doors, improving rollover protection. A large sloping grille with vertical bars and Endura bumpers that met new 5-mile-per-hour crash standards. More sculpted sides and a longer hood, giving it a cleaner, modern look. While the styling was sharp, purists lamented the loss of the pillarless hardtop coupe. The 73's heavier, more enclosed feel made it seem less sporty and more personal luxury coupe. The GTO still offered V8 muscle, but detuning was taking a toll. Standard 400 cubic inch V8 rated at 230 net horsepower, down from gross ratings of 350 to 370 horsepower just a few years earlier. Optional 455 cubic inch V8 with 250 net horsepower, or the 455 HO with 250 net horsepower but more torque. Emissions controls and lower compression meant the engines ran on regular unleaded, but lacked the brutal punch of the late 60s cars. Quarter-mile times for a 455 GTO in 1973 were now in the 15-second range, respectable but far from the low 13s of the earlier Ram Air cars. Pontiac tried to market the 73 GTO as both a performance car and a more refined, comfortable coupe. Unfortunately, that split personality confused buyers. The Firebird Trans Am was now Pontiac's true performance halo car. The Le Mans and Grand Am covered the comfort side of the market. The GTO ended up awkwardly in the middle. Not hardcore enough for muscle fans, not plush enough for luxury buyers. Even its visual aggression was toned down. Gone were the massive hood scoops of old, replaced with a single NACA-style duct, and stripes were now optional rather than loud and standard. The numbers tell the story. Pontiac sold just 4,806 GTOs in 1973, a far cry from the 90,000-plus units of its 1966 peak. Many younger performance fans were gravitating to smaller, lighter, cheaper cars like the Camaro Z28 or Duster 340. Older buyers who liked the looks were more interested in the luxury and ride comfort of a Grand Prix. The GTO was being squeezed from both ends. Today, the 73 GTO is an interesting piece of muscle car history. It marked the full transition from 1960s brute force to 1970s compromise. A car designed to survive new regulations and buyer expectations, but in doing so, it lost the edge that made it famous. Collectors often view the 73 as the beginning of the end for the GTO nameplate, which would limp along until 1974 before becoming an option on the Ventura Compact. That said, a well-restored 73 with a 450 still turns heads and has enough torque to make its presence known.
Number 6. By the mid-1970s, Oldsmobile wanted in on the booming personal sporty coupe market that cars like the Ford Mustang and Chevy Camaro had helped popularize. But there was a problem. GM wasn't about to fund a completely new sporty coupe for each of its brands. Instead, they tapped into their subcompact H-body platform, the same one underpinning the troubled Chevrolet Vega, and simply gave it different styling for Buick, Pontiac, and Oldsmobile. The result for Oldsmobile was the Starfire GT, a car with flashy stripes, spoilers, and the illusion of speed, but one that couldn't escape the skeletons in its corporate closet. The Starfire GT did its best to look the part. Mini Firebird proportions with a long hood, short deck, and sharply raked nose. Available GT appearance package added racing stripes, body-colored sport mirrors, styled steel wheels, and blacked-out trim. Buyers could even opt for louvers and rear spoilers to make it look ready for the Trans Am series. From a distance, it did look like a scaled-down muscle coupe, but the moment you got closer, the reality set in. Here's where the Starfire GT's problems began. The Starfire was mechanically identical to the Chevy Vega, including the much-maligned aluminum 2.3-liter inline-4 that had a reputation for overheating, warping cylinder heads, and burning oil. The chassis and suspension were decent for a small car, but still tuned more for comfort than aggressive handling. Optional engines included a 231 cubic inch Buick V6 or a 262 cubic inch Chevy small block V8. But smog-era detuning meant the V8 only made 110 to 125 horsepower. For a car marketed with racing stripes and GT badging, those numbers were embarrassing. By 1975, the muscle car market had collapsed under insurance hikes, emissions regulations, and the oil crisis. The Starfire GT was marketed as a fuel-conscious sporty coupe, not an all-out street racer. Its performance was more about image than acceleration. Think style first, speed second. A typical GT with the 2.3-liter four-cylinder could barely crack 0 to 60 in 14 to 15 seconds, slower than some family sedans of the era. The car's strength was appearance, but once buyers realized it was basically a Vega in Oldsmobile clothes, the shine wore off quickly. The Vega-derived engineering haunted the Starfire GT from the start. Engine durability issues were well documented. Rust protection was poor, with cars showing corrosion in just a few years. Fit and finish didn't match Oldsmobile's usual standards, frustrating loyal Olds customers expecting something more refined. Even the optional V6 or V8 didn't completely solve the reputation problem, because by the time you upgraded engines and added options, the Starfire cost almost as much as a bigger, more powerful Cutlass. The Starfire GT had modest success early on, largely because it was new and looked exciting in showrooms. But word spread quickly about its Vega DNA and reliability record, and resale values tanked. Performance magazines were lukewarm at best, praising the styling but criticizing the lack of real performance. Buyers who wanted a small sporty car started looking toward imports like the Toyota Celica or Datsun 280Z, which offered similar size but better execution. Today, the 1975 Oldsmobile Starfire GT is remembered as a prime example of GM's badge engineering missteps of the 1970s. On paper, it gave Olds dealers a competitor in the sporty compact market. In reality, it was a dressed-up Vega, inheriting all of that car's weaknesses while promising something it couldn't deliver. Among collectors, they're rare simply because so few survived, but they're often valued more as quirky artifacts of the malaise era than as desirable performance machines.
Number 5. In 1973, Dodge found itself in an awkward position. The muscle car market was cooling, the personal luxury boom was heating up, and the traditional full-size car buyer was starting to shift tastes. The Dodge Polara Coupe was one of those cars caught right in the middle. Cleanly styled, roomy, and powerful if ordered right, but unable to stand out in Dodge's own crowded lineup. The 1973 Polara Coupe represented the last years of Chrysler's fuselage styling era, characterized by smooth, unbroken body curves and an emphasis on flow rather than ornament. The coupe featured a sweeping roofline, broad C-pillars, and a long, low stance that looked more graceful than flashy. The front fascia carried a clean grille design with integrated bumper ends, a necessary change due to new 5-mile-per-hour bumper regulations in 1973. Compared to the more extroverted Charger SE or sporty Challenger, the Polara Coupe's look was restrained, leaning toward elegance over aggression. The Polara Coupe wasn't a muscle car, but Dodge still gave it plenty of engine choices. Base models came with a 318 cubic inch V8. Buyers could move up to 360, 400, or even the mighty 440 Magnum V8 for genuine performance. With the 440 and dual exhaust, a Polara Coupe could surprise stoplight challengers. Though by 73, net horsepower ratings and emissions controls had already taken some of the bite out of these big V8s. Despite the capability, Dodge never marketed the Polara Coupe as a performance model, leaving that space to the Charger, Coronet RT earlier years, and the Challenger. The Polara's biggest enemy wasn't Ford or GM. It was Dodge and Chrysler itself. Buyers wanting sportiness were funneled toward the Charger. Buyers wanting personal luxury were pushed toward the Chrysler Cordoba, introduced shortly after, or Dodge Monaco Brougham. Even Dodge's own Monaco shared much of the Polara sheet metal and mechanicals, making the Polara seem like a middle choice without a strong identity. This internal overlap meant that the Polara Coupe was often the answer to a question no one asked. By 1973, the American car market was shifting rapidly. Personal luxury coupes like the Chevrolet Monte Carlo, Pontiac Grand Prix, and Ford Thunderbolt were dominating headlines. The oil crisis later in the year made buyers more fuel-conscious, not exactly a good time to sell a full-size V8 coupe. The muscle car boom had faded, meaning the Polara's size and performance options no longer aligned with the era's priorities. The Polara Coupe sold modestly, but it was never a showroom star. Buyers praised its smooth ride, roomy interior, and understated good looks. Critics noted that it lacked the distinctive identity of its competitors, both inside and outside the Chrysler family. Many were purchased as comfortable commuters for executives or middle-class families, rarely as enthusiast cars. Today, the 1973 Dodge Polara Coupe is a bit of a hidden gem in the classic Mopar world. Surviving examples often appeal to collectors who want full-size Mopar style without the muscle car price tag. Its clean fuselage lines have aged well, and the big block versions still offer satisfying torque. However, it will always live in the shadow of more famous Dodges like the Charger and Challenger. If you're looking at the Mopar family tree, the 1973 Polara Coupe is like the quietly stylish cousin at the reunion. Not the loud show-off, not the luxury snob, but still worth a second look if you know what you're seeing.
Number 4. By the late 1970s, Chrysler's Cordoba had carved out a niche as a mid-priced personal luxury coupe that offered style, plushness, and presence without the full Cadillac or Lincoln price tag. The Cordoba LS, introduced for 1978, was the most upscale and heavily optioned version, a final flourish of big coupe excess before the downsizing wave hit Chrysler full force. When the original Cordoba debuted in 1975, Chrysler scored a hit. It was Chrysler's first smaller luxury coupe, though still big by today's standards, and aimed at Monte Carlo, Thunderbird, and Grand Prix buyers. Famous TV ads featuring Ricardo Montalban talking about soft Corinthian leather became iconic, even if that phrase was more marketing poetry than upholstery reality. The Cordoba's opera windows, vinyl tops, and sharp-edged styling perfectly fit the Brougham era's love for personalized luxury. By 1978, Chrysler doubled down on the formula with the LS, an even more premium limited edition model. The 1978 Cordoba LS took everything people loved about the regular Cordoba and turned the luxury dial to 11. Exterior highlights: distinctive color-keyed grille and trim, Landau-style vinyl roof with a brushed metal accent band. Opera windows with unique LS badging. Special paint colors often paired with contrasting roof treatments. Interior: plush velour or leather seating, often in rich earth tones or deep jewel hues. Extra chrome trim on dash and door panels. Power everything: windows, locks, and seats. A quieter, better insulated cabin for a more refined ride. By 1978, the muscle car era was long gone, and the Cordoba LS reflected that. Base engine, 318 cubic inch V8, focused on smoothness and economy, relatively speaking. Optional, 360 or 400 V8s for those wanting more effortless cruising. Top choice, the 440 big block, still available but detuned for emissions and more about torque than raw horsepower. Chrysler tuned the Cordoba LS for a soft, floaty ride with light steering, perfect for the Brome buyer, but far from sporty. Here's where things got tricky for the LS. Full-size coupe demand was fading. The personal luxury market was shifting toward downsized models like GM's new 1977 Monte Carlo and Cutlass Supreme. Fuel economy concerns were rising again, and even the smaller GM coupes were more efficient than Chrysler's still large Cordoba. Chrysler itself was in serious financial trouble by the late 70s, with limited funds to update its products. The Cordoba LS was a gorgeous package, but it was out of step with where the market was heading. Buyers who wanted maximum style for the dollar still loved the Cordoba LS. Critics noted that it felt like an old-school luxury coupe in a market that was moving toward lighter, nimbler, and more fuel-efficient cars. Sales were decent for 1978, but the writing was on the wall. Big, plush coupes would soon be dinosaurs. Today, the 1978 Cordoba LS stands as one of the last great expressions of 1970s Brome excess. Collectors appreciate it for its period-correct style and connection to the peak personal luxury era. Surviving examples with their original LS trim and plush interiors feel like rolling time capsules. It also has a touch of pop culture immortality, thanks to Ricardo Montalban's commercials, which made the Cordoba a household name. If the standard Cordoba was Chrysler's big hit of the mid-70s, the LS was its greatest hits album, lavish, stylish, and arriving just before the curtain fell on the era of the big personal luxury coupe.
Number 3. The early 1970s were an exciting but turbulent time in the American car market. Muscle cars were still popular, but insurance costs, safety regulations, and looming emissions rules were already reshaping the landscape. Within this environment, Mercury, Ford's upscale division, the Montego name had been around since 1968, essentially serving as Mercury's version of the Ford Torino. It was part of the intermediate class, slotting between the smaller Comet and the larger Marquis. The GT was intended as the performance and style flagship of the Montego line. It wore unique fastback bodywork, officially called sports roof in Ford marketing, a sweeping roofline that gave it a more aerodynamic, NASCAR-ready look. The 1972 GT was restyled along with the rest of the Montego lineup. New front end with a pronounced prow-like grille and twin headlights recessed in squared housings. Long hood and short deck proportions gave it classic muscle car balance. Available in bright, eye-catching colors, oranges, yellows, and metallic greens, with optional tape stripes to signal its sporty intent. Inside, buyers could choose between bench or bucket seats with optional sporty trim packages. On paper and in photos, the Montego GT looked like it could compete with the likes of the Chevelle SS, Roadrunner, or Cutlass 442. Mercury didn't skimp on available muscle. Standard engine, a 302 cubic inch V8, adequate but not exciting. Optional small blocks, 351 Cleveland in various tunes. Big block choices, 400 and 429 cubic inch V8s, with the latter making the GT a legitimate high-speed contender. Transmission choices included 3-speed manual, 4-speed manual, and 3-speed automatic. While the GT could be ordered as a serious performance machine, most were built with smaller engines for daily driving, diluting its street reputation.
The Montego GT faced a strange dilemma. Mercury already had sporty competition from within. The Cougar XR7 appealed to style-conscious buyers, while Ford's Torino Cobra and Gran Torino Sport grabbed the muscle crowd. Mercury's marketing leaned heavily toward luxury and refinement, so the GT's performance image wasn't strongly promoted. Many buyers simply didn't realize Mercury offered a fastback performance model at all. Dealer lots often prioritized selling more profitable luxury trims. This was the year insurance surcharges on muscle cars hit hard. Many potential GT buyers were scared off by rising premiums for big V8 cars, increasing fuel prices and the first rumblings of the oil crisis, federal safety regulations that added weight and dulled performance. Even the cars that did sell often came with smaller engines, which further muddied the GT's performance image. The Montego GT faced a strange dilemma. Mercury already had sporty competition from within. The Cougar XR7 appealed to style-conscious buyers, while Ford's Torino Cobra and Gran Torino Sport grabbed the muscle crowd. Mercury's marketing leaned heavily toward luxury and refinement, so the GT's performance image wasn't strongly promoted. Many buyers simply didn't realize Mercury offered a fastback performance model at all. Dealer lots often prioritized selling more profitable luxury trims. This was the year insurance surcharges on muscle cars hit hard. Many potential GT buyers were scared off by rising premiums for big V8 cars, increasing fuel prices and the first rumblings of the oil crisis, federal safety regulations that added weight and dulled performance. Even the cars that did sell often came with smaller engines, which further muddied the GT's performance image. Exact GT production numbers were low, only a fraction of total Montego sales. Buyers gravitated toward the Montego MX and luxury-oriented models. The GT's low profile and minimal marketing meant it never got the hero status of similar GM or Mopar offerings. Today, the 1972 Montego GT is a hidden gem for collectors. It shares mechanical parts with the Torino, making it easier to restore. The fastback styling is arguably one of Mercury's best of the era. Surviving big block GTs are extremely rare and can surprise modern muscle fans with their performance. But its legacy is one of missed opportunity. A well-designed, attractive, and potentially powerful car that simply got lost in the noise of a crowded marketplace.
Number 2. By the mid-1970s, Detroit's muscle car scene was in full retreat. Insurance costs had soared, fuel prices had spiked after the 1973 oil crisis, and federal emissions and safety regulations were steadily choking horsepower. But despite the changing times, automakers knew one thing: names still sold cars. Dodge, eager to keep the Charger nameplate alive, decided in 1975 to add some showroom excitement by reviving a legendary moniker, Daytona. Unfortunately, what rolled out of dealerships was a far cry from the NASCAR-bred Charger Daytona of 1969. Instead, it was a style package wrapped around a softened personal luxury coupe, and enthusiasts noticed the difference immediately. The original 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona was a purpose-built, wind-tunnel-tested, winged aero warrior designed to dominate NASCAR. It had a massive rear wing, a pointed aerodynamic nose, high-horsepower 440 Magnum or 426 Hemi engines. By contrast, the 1975 Daytona was born into an entirely different era. Dodge had redesigned the Charger for 1975, shifting toward a personal luxury emphasis. The car shared much of its platform with the Chrysler Cordoba. The focus was now on comfort, style, and plush interiors rather than outright performance. The 1975 Charger Daytona tried to project speed with visual tricks. Bold Daytona graphics along the lower body, contrasting two-tone paint schemes, vinyl roof, often in bright colors, a far cry from wind tunnel aerodynamics, louvered rear quarter windows, and color-keyed rally wheels. It looked sharp in a 1970s disco-era way, but anyone expecting NASCAR heritage would have been disappointed. Nothing on the bodywork served an aerodynamic purpose. Under the hood, the Daytona was a different animal from its namesake. Base engine, a 318 cubic inch V8 making around 150 net horsepower. Optional, 360, 400, and 440 cubic inch engines, but all were strangled by emissions controls and low compression, producing far less power than early 70s versions. The legendary Hemi? Long gone. 0 to 60 mile per time times were a shadow of the late 60s Chargers, often in the 9 to 11 second range, even with larger engines. This was not the pavement-ripping Daytona of old, it was more of a stylish cruiser. Dodge's decision to use the Daytona name was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it got attention. Buyers recognized the name from racing glory. On the other, it set expectations the car couldn't meet. Muscle car enthusiasts felt betrayed, while luxury car shoppers didn't care about racing heritage. The result? Sales were modest, but the car failed to build lasting enthusiasm. The 1975 Charger lineup as a whole signaled Dodge's shift from the muscle car wars to the personal luxury segment. The Cordoba was Chrysler's success story, and Dodge wanted its own version. The Daytona was essentially an image package on a comfort-focused platform, perfect for the era's disco boulevards, not drag strips. Today, the 1975 Charger Daytona is mostly remembered as a curious example of nameplate marketing, when a legendary badge gets applied to a car that shares nothing with its forebear. A time capsule of mid-70s styling trends, bold graphics, vinyl roofs, and plush interiors. Rare in terms of survival, but not sought after for performance, instead valued by collectors for nostalgia and uniqueness. It's a reminder that in the mid-1970s, even the most aggressive-sounding name couldn't disguise the fact that the muscle era was over.
Number 1. By 1979, the Pontiac Sunbird was Pontiac's entry into the growing market for small, affordable cars that offered some sporty style without the big price or gas-guzzling engines of traditional muscle cars. The Sunbird Safari wagon was the wagon variant, aimed at buyers who wanted utility and practicality but didn't want to sacrifice a fun, youthful image. Unfortunately, while the Sunbird Safari looked the part with sporty graphics and styling cues, its performance was modest at best, a reflection of the era's fuel economy concerns and tightening regulations. The Sunbird was Pontiac's version of the GM J-Platform subcompact, shared with the Chevrolet Monza, Buick Skyhawk, and Oldsmobile Starfire. The Safari wagon variant was added to bring family-friendly utility to the sporty subcompact segment. Compact wagons were gaining popularity in the late 70s as buyers wanted smaller, more fuel-efficient vehicles that could haul cargo or kids. The Sunbird Safari wagon featured bold striping packages and Safari decals that gave it a sporty, youthful appearance. It sported sleek lines compared to boxier wagons with a sloping rear hatch and a roof rack. Bright paint colors and racing stripes were offered to catch the eye, helping it stand out from the mundane family wagons of the time. The interior was reasonably well appointed, with options like sport seats and upgraded gauges to reinforce the sporty vibe. The Sunbird Safari's engine options were primarily focused on fuel economy and reliability rather than performance. Base engines included a 2.3-liter inline-4, producing roughly 78 horsepower, modest for a car trying to look sporty. A 3.8-liter V6 from Buick was available later, but even then, power output was modest, around 110 horsepower. Manual transmissions were offered, but typically paired with small engines. Automatics were more common. The lightweight body helped keep the car nimble, but the power-to-weight ratio was not impressive by any stretch. Suspension was tuned more for comfort and daily usability than sporty handling. The wagon body added weight and bulk, further diluting any sporty intentions. While the car was maneuverable in tight city streets, it lacked the punch or excitement to thrill driving enthusiasts. For families or young buyers wanting style with practicality, it was a decent choice. Just don't expect muscle car thrills. The Sunbird Safari wagon competed against other sporty subcompact wagons, like the Ford Pinto wagon and Toyota Celica wagon. It appealed mostly to young families or singles needing cargo space with a sporty edge. Sales were steady, but never spectacular. Buyers generally prioritized reliability and economy over raw performance. Its sporty appearance helped keep interest up during a time when many small wagons were plain and utilitarian. Today, the 1979 Pontiac Sunbird Safari wagon is mostly remembered as a nostalgic oddity, a sporty-looking compact wagon from the Malaise era. It represents the late 70s trend of adding style and personality to economy cars even if the performance didn't match. Surviving examples are rare, often collected by enthusiasts of quirky, lesser-known GM models. The Sunbird paved the way for later sporty compact models that would better balance performance and practicality.